There's a moment in every life when the masks we wear begin to feel too heavy, when the roles we play start to feel like costumes that no longer fit. You wake up one morning and realize that despite all your achievements, all your relationships, all your possessions, there's still this quiet ache inside, a longing for something you can't quite name. Maybe it's sitting in traffic or lying in bed at 3 a.m. or watching your reflection in a coffee shop window, when suddenly you feel like a stranger to yourself. This isn't depression or a midlife crisis. It's your soul calling you home to who you really are beneath all the doing, all the becoming, all the endless searching for happiness in tomorrow. What if the peace you're seeking isn't somewhere out there but has been waiting patiently inside you all along? We live in a culture of amnesia, beautiful souls. From the moment we're born, we begin this elaborate process of forgetting who we are. It starts innocently enough. We learn our names, our family roles, our place in the social order. But somewhere along the way, these labels become chains. We forget that we are not our job titles, not our bank account balances, not our relationship status, not even our thoughts and emotions. We become so identified with these temporary costumes that we lose sight of the eternal being wearing them. Think about a child playing dress-up. One moment they're a pirate, the next a princess, then a superhero. They slip in and out of these roles with such ease because they haven't forgotten the essential truth. They are not the costume. But as adults, we've become so convinced by our own performances that we've forgotten there's an actor beneath all the acting. We've mistaken the waves for the ocean, the clouds for the sky, the thoughts for the thinker. This forgetting isn't your fault. It's the human condition. We're born into a world that immediately begins teaching us who we should be rather than helping us remember who we are. Parents, teachers, society, all well-meaning, all trying to help us survive and succeed, inadvertently participate in this great forgetting. They teach us to be good students, good employees, good citizens. They rarely teach us to be good souls. The tragedy is that in trying to become someone, we lose sight of the one who is becoming. We get so caught up in the process of self-improvement that we forget the self that's being improved. We collect achievements like badges, relationships like trophies, experiences like souvenirs, all while the true treasure, our authentic being, remains buried beneath layers of conditioning and expectation. But here's what I've learned through decades of spiritual practice and psychedelic exploration. You can't lose what you are. You can only forget it. The peace you're seeking, the love you're craving, the wholeness you're pursuing, it's not something you need to create or achieve. It's something you need to remember. It's been there all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise of your mind, the drama of your emotions, the endless story of your life. But underneath all the stories, beneath all the differences, beyond all the conflicts, there is this unbreakable thread of connection, this golden cord of consciousness that links every heart to every other heart. When you see this connection, when you feel this underlying unity, service becomes as natural as breathing. You help others not because you should, but because you are others. You love not because it's the right thing to do, but because love is what you are. You serve not to get something in return, but because giving is receiving, because serving is being served, because loving is being loved. This is what I mean when I say we're all walking each other home. Home is not a place you go to. Home is what you are. Home is the peace that passes understanding, the love that knows no conditions, the awareness that remains unchanged through all the changes of life. And every time you meet another soul with an open heart, every time you offer presence to someone who is suffering, every time you choose love over fear, you are walking them home and they are walking you home. The path is made by walking, and we are all walking it together. Some of us are a little ahead, some a little behind, but we're all heading in the same direction. We're all returning to the same source, the same love, the same truth. And the most beautiful part is that we don't have to wait until we arrive to be home. We can be home right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this heart that is reading these words. So let me leave you with this. You are exactly where you need to be. You always have been. The seeking, the struggling, the searching. It's all been perfect, all been part of the journey home. You don't need to be anyone other than who you are. You don't need to go anywhere other than where you are. You don't need to do anything other than what you're doing. You just need to remember what you've always known, but keep forgetting. You are love itself, appearing as a human being. The mantras will come and go, the practices will change, the teachers will appear and disappear, but the truth they're all pointing to remains constant. You are already what you seek. You are already home. You are already loved. You are already free. And so is everyone else, even if they don't know it yet. This is the ultimate purification. Not the elimination of what you are, but the recognition of what you are. Not the destruction of your humanity, but the realization of your divinity. Not the escape from this world, but the transformation of this world through the power of awakened love. Welcome home, beautiful soul. You've never actually left. The ego, bless its complicated heart, has appointed itself as your personal secretary, filing away every experience, every judgment, every comparison into neat little folders labeled me and not me. It's created this elaborate filing system called your personality, your history, your identity. And while this system can be useful for navigating the world, it becomes a prison when you mistake the filing cabinet for the one who owns it. The ego loves to keep busy. It thrives on problems to solve, goals to achieve, enemies to defeat. It's like a computer that's been programmed to run continuously, generating an endless stream of thoughts, worries, plans, and judgments. It tells you stories about who you are, what you lack, what you need to become. It whispers that you're not good enough, not spiritual enough, not successful enough, not loved enough. It's always comparing, always competing, always keeping score. But here's the beautiful irony. The ego is not your enemy. It's just doing its job. It's like a security guard who's been told to protect the building but has forgotten that the building is already safe. The ego thinks it's protecting you from danger, but it's actually protecting you from life itself. It keeps you safe in a small, familiar box, while the vast sky of your true nature remains unexplored. The ego is terrified of the present moment because in the present moment it has no power. It can only exist in the past, reliving old stories, or in the future, planning new ones. It's like a vampire that can't survive in the light of present moment awareness. That's why it works so hard to keep you distracted, always thinking about what happened yesterday or worrying about what might happen tomorrow. Watch your mind for just 5 minutes and you'll see the ego at work. Notice how it jumps from thought to thought, never resting, never satisfied. It's like a monkey. He's swinging from branch to branch, never pausing to notice the tree. The mind creates this elaborate inner dialogue, this constant commentary on life, and we mistake this commentary for reality itself. The ego also loves to create separation. It divides the world into categories: good and bad, right and wrong, spiritual and mundane, us and them. It tells you that you're different from others, that you're special or that you're flawed. It creates this sense of isolation that makes you feel like you're alone in the universe, fighting against a hostile world. But this separation is just another story, another costume, another case of mistaken identity. The most cunning trick the ego plays is convincing you that you need it to survive. It tells you that without it, you'd have no motivation, no protection, no sense of self. But this is like a prison guard convincing you that you need the prison for security. The truth is, you don't need the ego's protection because you were never in danger to begin with. You don't need its motivation because your true nature is already whole and complete. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the spiritual path itself can become the ego's most sophisticated trap. You start meditating and the ego says, "Great, Now I'm a meditator. I'm more spiritual than those people who don't meditate. You read spiritual books and the ego says, excellent, now I'm enlightened. I understand things that others don't. You go to workshops and retreats and the ego says, perfect, now I'm on the path. I'm evolving while others are stuck. The seeking mind turns everything into a project, including enlightenment itself. It approaches spirituality like it approaches everything else, as something to achieve, to master, to add to its collection of accomplishments. It reads about non-attachment and becomes attached to being non-attached. It learns about letting go and holds tightly to the idea of letting go. It hears about being present and spends all its time thinking about how to be more present. This is perhaps the most painful irony of the spiritual journey. The very desire to wake up can become another form of sleep. The very effort to find peace can become another form of agitation. The very attempt to transcend the ego can become the ego's greatest victory. It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The harder you chase it, the faster it runs away. The spiritual marketplace is full of promises. Follow these steps and you'll be enlightened. Practice this technique and you'll find peace. Believe this teaching and you'll be saved. And the seeking mind gobbles it all up, collecting methods and mantras and masters like a spiritual consumer, always looking for the next fix, the next breakthrough, the next level of achievement. But here's what I discovered in India, sitting with my guru Neem Karoli Baba. The very one who is seeking is the one who is already found. The very one who is trying to become enlightened is already the light. The very one who is attempting to find God is already the beloved. The seeking is just another costume, another role, another beautiful but unnecessary dance. The mantras we chant, the meditations we practice, the retreats we attend. These aren't meant to create something new in you. They're meant to remove what's covering up what's already there. It's like polishing a mirror that's been covered with dust. The mirror doesn't become reflective through polishing. It always was reflective. The polishing just reveals what was always true. This is the ultimate paradox of the spiritual path. You can't get there from here because you're already there. You can't find yourself because you were never lost. You can't become who you truly are because you already are who you truly are. The whole journey is just an elaborate way of discovering that you never needed to go anywhere at all. So how do we stop this endless seeking? How do we step out of the ego's elaborate game? Sometimes life itself provides the answer in the form of what we least want to face, our pain, our losses, our moments of complete breakdown. These experiences that we spend so much energy trying to avoid are often the very doorways that lead us home. I learned this lesson most powerfully when I had my stroke in 1997. One moment I was Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher, the guy who had it all figured out. The next moment I was a man who couldn't speak, couldn't walk, couldn't even remember his own name. The ego that had spent decades constructing an identity around being wise and articulate was suddenly rendered speechless. It was terrifying and humbling and ultimately profoundly liberating. You see, suffering has this remarkable quality. It strips away everything that isn't essential. When you're in real pain, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the end of a relationship, a health crisis, or simply the quiet desperation of feeling lost, all the games the ego plays suddenly seem irrelevant. The masks fall away, the roles become meaningless. You're left with the raw, unvarnished truth of what you are beneath all the costumes. Most of us spend our lives trying to avoid this stripping away. We medicate our pain, distract ourselves from our sadness, run from our fears. We think that spiritual practice is about transcending suffering, rising above it, becoming so enlightened that we're immune to life's difficulties. But this is another ego trap, another way of trying to control the uncontrollable. The mystics throughout history have known a different truth. Suffering is not the opposite of awakening. It's often the doorway to it. When everything you thought you knew about yourself crumbles, when all your carefully constructed defenses fail, when you're brought to your knees by circumstances beyond your control, that's when the real work begins. That's when you discover what remains when everything else falls away. But here's the crucial distinction. It's not the suffering itself that awakens us. It's how we meet the suffering. You can spend years, decades even, lost in the story of your pain, identifying with it, feeding it, making it the center of your identity. Or you can learn to be present with the pain without becoming it, to witness the suffering without drowning an eye. This is where the ancient practices of surrender and acceptance become not just spiritual concepts, but survival skills. When you stop fighting what is, when you stop insisting that life should be different than it is, something miraculous happens. You discover that you are larger than your circumstances. You realize that the awareness that witnesses the pain is itself untouched by the pain. Think of it like this. Clouds pass through the sky, but they don't stain the sky. Waves rise and fall on the ocean, but they don't disturb the ocean's depths. Similarly, thoughts and emotions and experiences move through the vast space of your consciousness, but they don't fundamentally alter who you are. You are the sky, not the clouds. You are the ocean, not the waves. This shift in perspective, from being the contents of consciousness to being consciousness itself, is what transforms suffering from a problem to be solved into a teacher to be honored. Every difficult emotion, every painful experience, every moment of confusion becomes an opportunity to practice this deeper seeing, this wider embrace. The present moment, this very moment right now, is the only place where this transformation can happen. Not in some future state of enlightenment, not in some past moment of clarity, but here in the messy, imperfect, beautiful reality of what is. Yet how much of our lives do we spend anywhere but here? The mind is like a time machine, constantly shuttling between past and future, rarely landing in the present. We replay old conversations, relive old hurts, rehearse future scenarios, plan for possibilities that may never come. We're like actors who've forgotten we're on stage, so lost in the script that we miss the actual performance. But the present moment is not just another spiritual concept to understand. It's a living reality to be experienced. It's the only place where life actually happens. The past exists only in memory, the future only in imagination. The present is where your breath is, where your heartbeat is, where your feet touch the ground, where your eyes meet these words. When you truly arrive in the present moment, something extraordinary happens. You realize that you've been looking for happiness in all the wrong places. You've been seeking peace in the future, fulfillment in the next achievement, love in the next relationship, understanding in the next book. But peace isn't something you find. It's something you are when you stop looking for it elsewhere. The present moment is like a doorway that's always open, but we keep walking past it, convinced that what we're seeking must be somewhere else. We're like someone searching for their glasses while they're sitting on top of their head. What we're looking for is so close, so immediate, so obvious that we completely miss it. This is why all the great spiritual traditions point to the same essential practice, presence. Whether it's called mindfulness, contemplation, remembering God, or simply being here now, the instruction is always the same. Stop, breathe, and wake up to what is, not what was, not what would be, but what is. In the present moment, you don't have problems. You have sensations, thoughts, emotions, but not problems. Problems exist in the story your mind tells about those sensations, thoughts, and emotions. In the present moment, you don't have a past to regret or a future to worry about. You simply have this breath, this heartbeat, this moment of aliveness. But here's what's really beautiful. When you're fully present, you realize that you're not alone in this moment. You're not an isolated individual struggling through life by yourself. You're part of something much larger, much more interconnected than your separate self ever imagined. We live under the spell of a grand illusion, the belief that we are separate beings, isolated islands of consciousness, fundamentally alone in a hostile universe. This illusion is so pervasive, so convincing that we rarely question it. We look out at the world and see a clear boundary between me and not me, between in here and out there, between self and other. But what if this boundary is not as real as it appears? What if the very sense of separation that causes so much suffering is itself a kind of optical illusion of consciousness? What if the walls we feel between ourselves and the world are made of the same insubstantial stuff as the walls in our dreams? When you look closely at your direct experience, something remarkable emerges. You can't actually find where you end and the world begins. Your thoughts arise from the same mysterious source as the birds singing outside your window. Your breath is the same air that has been breathed by every living being on the planet. The atoms in your body are the same atoms that once sparkled in distant stars. Science tells us that we're all made of stardust, that the iron in our blood was forged in the heart of dying stars billions of years ago. But this isn't just a poetic metaphor, it's a literal truth. The boundary between you and the cosmos is conceptual, not actual. You are not in the universe. You are the universe expressing itself as you. This recognition, that separation is a story we tell ourselves rather than an ultimate reality, is perhaps the most revolutionary insight of human consciousness. It changes everything. When you realize that the other person is not actually other, that their joy is your joy and their pain is your pain, compassion becomes not a moral obligation, but a natural response. The great spiritual teachers throughout history have pointed to this same truth using different words. Love thy neighbor as thyself isn't a commandment, it's a recognition that your neighbor is yourself wearing a different costume. Namaste doesn't mean hello, it means the divine in me recognizes the divine in you, because there's only one divine expressing itself as both of us. This isn't just philosophy, it's experiential reality. In moments of deep meditation, in experiences of profound love, in times of great crisis or great joy, the boundaries dissolve and we taste this underlying unity. We remember what we've always known but keep forgetting. We are all waves in the same ocean, all notes in the same symphony, all faces of the same moon. But to live from this recognition requires a kind of death, the death of who we think we are. The ego, with all its stories and strategies and separate identity, must die for this larger truth to be born. This isn't a literal death, but a letting go so complete that it feels like dying. It's the death of the small self that allows the birth of the true self. This dying before dying is perhaps the most profound spiritual practice there is. It's the willingness to let go of everything you've been taught about who you are, everything you've achieved, everything you've accumulated, everything you've become. It's the radical surrender of all your identities, your roles, your relationships, your beliefs, your story, so that you can discover what remains when all of that falls away. This process is terrifying for the ego because it's literally the end of the ego's world. The ego depends on maintaining its separate identity, its story, its control. When you start to let go of these things, the ego sounds every alarm bell it has. It tells you that you're losing yourself, that you're becoming nobody, that you're disappearing into nothingness. But what actually happens is the opposite. You discover that you're not becoming nobody. You're becoming everybody. You're not disappearing into nothingness. You're expanding into everythingness. You're not losing yourself. You're finding your true self, the self that was never born and can never die, the self that is the same in you as it is in me, as it is in every being that has ever existed. This death and rebirth happens not just once, but over and over again. Each time you let go of an old identity, an old story, an old way of seeing yourself, you die a little and are reborn a little more authentic. Each time you choose love over fear, presence over distraction, truth over comfort, you participate in this sacred dying and becoming. The spiritual path is not about adding something to yourself. It's about subtracting everything that you are not. It's about dying to the false self so that the true self can emerge. It's about letting go of who you think you are so that you can remember who you really are. And who you really are is so much more beautiful, so much more vast, so much more loving than the small self you've been pretending to be. But here's where the rubber meets the road, as they say. All this talk about oneness and presence and letting go, it's beautiful. But what does it actually mean in the messy, complicated world of human relationships and daily responsibilities? How do we take this understanding off the meditation cushion and into the grocery store, the workplace, the family dinner table? This is where service becomes not just a nice thing to do, but a sacred practice, a way of transforming our personal awakening into something that benefits all beings. When you truly understand that there is no separation between you and others, service stops being about helping them and becomes about healing the one self that appears as both giver and receiver. The beautiful thing about service is that it takes you out of the self-centered orbit of your own concerns and problems. When you're focused on alleviating someone else's suffering, your own troubles suddenly seem less overwhelming, not because you're avoiding them, but because you're seeing them from a larger perspective. You're remembering that you're part of something bigger than your individual story. I learned this lesson deeply through my work with the Siva Foundation, which we created to serve people in need around the world. When you're helping prevent blindness in Nepal or working with communities in Guatemala, your own spiritual struggles take on a different proportion. You realize that the same consciousness that worries about your meditation practice is the same consciousness that suffers from poverty and disease and injustice. Service has this remarkable quality. It transforms suffering into compassion, wounds into wisdom, pain into purpose. When you take your own difficulties and use them to understand and help others who are going through similar struggles, something alchemical happens. Your personal pain becomes impersonal healing. Your individual journey becomes universal medicine. Think about it. Who is better equipped to help someone struggling with addiction than someone who has walked that path themselves? Who can offer deeper comfort to someone grieving a loss than someone who has experienced their own dark night of the soul? Your wounds become your gifts, your struggles become your strengths, your breakdown becomes your breakthrough, not just for you, but for everyone you touch. This is what I mean by service as spiritual practice. It's not about being a do-gooder or accumulating good karma. It's about recognizing that healing happens in relationship, that awakening is not a solo journey, that love is not a private experience. When you serve others, you're not being altruistic, you're being realistic. You're acknowledging the truth that their well-being and your well-being are not separate things. But service isn't just about grand gestures or charitable organizations. It's about bringing this spirit of caring into every interaction, every relationship, every moment of your day. It's about listening to your friend with your whole heart, helping your neighbor carry their groceries, offering a smile to a stranger, being patient with the difficult person in your life. The practice of service gradually dissolves the ego's favorite story, that life is all about me, my needs, my problems, my enlightenment. It shifts your attention from what you can get to what you can give, from what you lack to what you have to offer, from being served to serving. And in that shift, something miraculous happens. You discover that in giving you receive, in serving you are served, in loving you are loved. Now let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable, the parts of yourself that you've been trying to hide, to heal, to transcend, the anger, the jealousy, the fear, the selfishness, the pettiness, all those aspects of your humanity that don't fit into your spiritual self-image. What if I told you that these shadow parts of yourself are not obstacles to your awakening, but essential ingredients in it? This is what I call fierce grace. The willingness to embrace all of yourself, not just the parts you like, not just the parts that seem spiritual or acceptable, but all of it. The light and the dark, the saint and the sinner, the wise one and the fool. Because here's the truth, you cannot heal what you will not feel. You cannot transform what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot love what you continue to reject. Most of us have been taught to be spiritual warriors, battling against our lower nature, fighting our demons, conquering our weaknesses. But what if the real spiritual practice is not about winning this war, but about making peace? What if the goal is not to eliminate your darkness, but to bring it into the light of awareness with such compassion that it transforms naturally? When I had my stroke, I was forced to confront aspects of myself that I had been spiritually bypassing for years. The anger at my body's limitations, the frustration with my speech difficulties, the fear of being seen as less than the wise teacher I had tried to be. I could no longer pretend to be above these human struggles. I had to meet them, acknowledge them, and somehow find a way to love them too. This is the art of fierce grace, holding space for your humanity while remembering your divinity. It's about being gentle with your imperfections while being honest about them. It's about accepting your limitations while not being limited by them. It's about loving yourself not despite your flaws, but because of your completeness, flaws and all. The spiritual path is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness includes everything, your generosity and your selfishness, your wisdom and your confusion, your love and your fear. When you can hold all of these aspects of yourself with equal compassion, when you can see them all as part of the human experience rather than personal failures, then you've found the secret to inner peace. This doesn't mean you stop growing or trying to be better. It means you stop fighting with reality, stop insisting that you should be different than you are, stop making your self-worth conditional on your spiritual progress. You start relating to your personality like a parent relates to a child, with love, patience, and gentle guidance, not with harsh judgment and impossible expectations. The beautiful thing about embracing your shadow is that it sets you free from the exhausting work of maintaining a spiritual persona. You can stop pretending to be more enlightened than you are, more peaceful than you feel, more loving than you're capable of being in this moment. You can just be human, beautifully and messily human, and find that this is enough. When you accept your own complexity, you naturally become more accepting of others' complexity. When you have compassion for your own struggles, you naturally extend compassion to others who are struggling. When you can love yourself in your imperfection, you can love others in theirs. This is how personal healing becomes universal healing. So here we are, you and I, at the end of our journey together. Though, of course, there is no end, just as there was no beginning. We are eternal beings, having a temporary human experience, and we are all walking each other home. Every person you meet, every soul you encounter, every heart you touch, they are all fellow travelers on the same pathless path, all seeking the same nameless truth, all longing for the same boundless love. This is perhaps the most beautiful teaching of all. You are not alone in this journey. You never were. The very person who annoys you most is walking the same path. The stranger on the bus is seeking the same peace. The difficult family member is longing for the same acceptance. The world leader you disagree with is searching for the same sense of worth. We are all just souls in costume, all playing our roles in the grand drama of awakening. Sometimes the costumes are very convincing. Sometimes we get so lost in our roles that we forget we're acting. Sometimes the drama feels so real that we lose sight of the love that's directing the whole production.